Aaron McGruder is here. He is the creator and artist behind the comic strip The Boondocks. Just 2 months after its national debut, newspapers in 195 cities have signed up for the strip. It makes it one of the biggest launches in comics history. I am pleased to have Aaron McGruder here and to take note of the fact that not only is it creating a lot of attention, but there are stories about him in both Time and Newsweek. Welcome to the program.
Thank you very much.
You seem so young to do a comic strip.
I look younger than I am.
How old are you?
I'm 25. I just turned 25.
This, as you sat down, you said to me, you have to be careful what you wish for.
You do. Since the launch, the amount of attention has been overwhelming. It started really about a week before the launch. Most of the client newspapers started calling to do interviews, and it's been basically nonstop since April 19th. And now it's getting into television, and here I am. And, the attention is it's a bit overwhelming to suddenly be thrust in front of several million readers a day, and they all like to talk back. So,
well, not only that, the demand of having to
on top of the demand of the actual job, which is more than a full-time job in and of itself, creating 7 strips a week.
Tell me a little bit about you.
I was born on the south side of Chicago in 1974. I lived there for a few months. My father was in the Air Force, and so we moved to Champaign-Urbana after a couple of years, and was after that to Louisville, Kentucky for a couple of years, and then in 1980 we moved to Columbia, Maryland, which is where I still live to this day. And you know, I
still live with your parents?
I still live with my parents. I have not had the time or the money until very recently to move out, and now I just have the money but not the time.
Right. And so when did this sort of desire to draw?
I've been drawing my whole life, off and on, not very seriously until high school. And in high school, I decided I wanted to break into comic books, do like superhero comics, draw for Marvel or whatever, which is a far more difficult task than I thought it was going to be.
What makes it difficult?
It really is demanding in terms of not only, again, your productivity, but your actual artistic skill has to be much better than most people perceive. Comic book art is probably the most difficult thing to do in terms of illustration. You're literally drawing out a movie. Mm-hmm. You get a script, it can be anything, and you have to be able to draw it quickly. So I was sort of mediocre at that, but not good enough to land a job like I wanted to. And I was in school at the time at the University of Maryland, and sort of meandering through classes. And the only thing I was taking was Afro-American Studies classes because I wanted to be an artist, and I didn't even plan on graduating. But I was on scholarship. I took a year off to pursue my illustration, and then they said, look, you had to come back, or else we're going to take all your money away. Yeah. So I came back and started playing with the idea of doing the strip in like 93, 94. At the same time, when I started realizing that since I'd taken so many Afro-American Studies classes, I might as well declare that to be the major. Yeah. And the two just meshed together. And I found the classes and the coursework did lay a good foundation to do what eventually would become the strip. And its print debut was at the University of Maryland in last week of the semester, 96, December 3rd, I think, and then continued on the following semester for a couple months. And then
did somebody see it, or what happened?
Oh, it was.
Or were you sending it off to everybody you could possibly find?
That happened afterwards. After the 2-month or so run in the newspaper at the University of Maryland, I had enough to go through the process of submitting to the half a dozen or so syndicates which control the newspaper markets, the funny pages.
And how long did it take you to get a serious, constructive response?
Those came pretty quick. Yeah. The serious constructive responses came pretty quick. The actual contract came a little later. I had, there's about 7 or so major syndicates. 2 or 3 of those really looked long and hard. It really wanted to, I think, put it out, but just were too afraid or didn't think they would be able to sell it enough. A few of those, a few other syndicates rejected it right out. Some impersonally, some with letters saying the strip was too angry, what have you. And then Universal Press eventually signed on. I actually met one of their vice presidents by accident in Chicago at the NABJ convention. and sat down with her as soon as I saw her little name tag, Universal Press.
I assume that's National Association of Black Journalists?
Yes, the NABJ. I was there literally just to try to find some support. I was going to sort of talk to black editors who worked at major papers so that if I had to self-syndicate, which I was planning on doing, that they would be there and they would push for the strip from within, which they did do. But I also, while I was there, I met this lady, Harriet Choice, and I kind of pulled her to the side and made her sit down and talk to me, and gave her a copy of the strip. And after she read through it, she went back to the syndicate, who was already considering it, and pushed for them to give me a contract, and they did by the end of that summer.
And so you're off and running then?
Pretty much. I mean, it's not a fast business. There was, I got that contract fall of 1997. But a lot of legal points had to be worked out. There was a lot of development that had to go. And I hadn't even graduated from school yet.
But that's less than 2 years ago, and already you've got these big stories about you.
Yeah.
And you've got how many movies? How many movies?
How many?
No, what movies?
They're coming.
They're coming. How many newspapers?
195.
So that's pretty much
Roughly.
An accurate figure that I had.
Yeah, the problem is that I don't really know the exact number because the foreign sales come in at a delay. Yeah. So I've heard rumors of Hong Kong and all of this.
For those who haven't seen it, what's this about?
The strip is essentially a racial, social, political satire. It's about a handful of African-American kids who are transplanted to the all-white suburbs, and they have to deal with their surroundings and deal with each other, and it plays out as an exploration of the American racial dynamic, both interracial and intraracial. And you have these different age groups, these different political philosophies of the characters and different perspectives all sort of clashing and bumping into each other. And that's the best way to wrap it up.
Excuse my ignorance. Are there any other African-American
syndicated cartoonists?
Yes.
There are about 4 or 5.
4 or 5?
Yeah.
And who are they?
Barbara Brandon does a weekly strip called Where I'm Coming From. It's in, I believe, about 30 or some papers. That's a wild guess. Rob Armstrong is actually the largest in distribution. He does a strip called Jumpstart, which is in over 300 papers.
Yeah.
Ray Billingsley does Curtis, which is in over 200 papers. And then there's Stephen Bentley, who does a strip called Herb and Jamal, and I'm not exactly familiar with how many papers he's in, or if he's even still doing it. And there's Maury Turner, who is really the first black syndicated comic strip creator. And I'm not sure if his strip is still in syndication. I know it does still run in some
So you're third or fourth in terms of largest in circulation?
Yeah, and in terms of distribution and number of papers.
Right.
Actual total circulation, if you were to add up my client papers, it could actually be the biggest because I have a lot of very large papers.
You have urban papers?
Yeah, really big cities.
What else creates controversy? I mean, if you talk about gangster concepts, does that create controversy?
Yeah, that whole thing. You know, Riley was really constructed to be a satire on contemporary black popular culture and contemporary hip-hop music and the glorification of crime and what have you. And people sort of take it on the surface level that I'm sort of implying that all black people are criminals. I mean, the whole point is with that character is that he's very, very young. You know, maybe like 7 or 8. And, you know, he's sort of obviously going out of his way to be a thug and to look menacing and all of this. And he's not. And that is wherein the humor lies. Only people, I think, are only looking at it on a very surface level.
The Washington Post called the strip funny, edgy, hip, and vulnerable, filled with attitude, slang, and irreverent. That's pretty good.
Yeah, that's good. You like it when the Washington Post says that.
Yeah. Now, the Washington Post might have said also, or I'm asking you, is this successful because, as it is, and had this meteoric success, you might argue, because it's all those things, funny, edgy, hip, and vulnerable, filled with attitude, slang, and irreverent, and African-American?
You know, there is, that's a tough question. I mean, some people say, well, were you just picked up because it was a black strip? And is that why it's so?
Well, I just posited that it's all these other things first.
Right. No,
but,
I mean, but
does it break through because it's African?
But you know, I mean, we had, you know, it is certainly a black strip. You know, there is nothing in comics history to indicate that it is at all a benefit to be a black cartoonist or to do a black strip. Those cartoonists that I mentioned, again, Rob Armstrong is the biggest in distribution. He's in over 300 papers. He's been doing it for over 10 years. And you want to compare that to the Peanuts or Calvin Hobbes, which are each in 2,200 papers. So there has been no hugely successful black strip in the over 100-year history of the medium. So in that sense, the argument would be, no, it's probably successful in spite of it being a black strip. However, I must say, the timing of when the strip was launched, which was the beginning of 1999, was a big time for hip-hop.
Right.
In terms of its mainstreaming of hip-hop, and Lauryn Hill winning all these Grammys. And so it may have been sold at a really good time, and hip-hop culture is very popular now, and that certainly may have contributed to its success.
Do you find any similarity with South Park?
I just saw the South Park movie a couple of days ago, and I have to say no. But no, actually,
how about
I can't
sensibilities?
say.
How about edginess?
I can't say 100% no, as a matter of fact, because I thought the South Park movie actually, if you sifted through all the profanity, it made a point about people being hypocritical,
right,
in terms of keeping their kids away from foul language, but putting all this violence out there. And so I think in that sense, I certainly try to get messages across. I don't do it in nearly the way that South Park does it, but I'm not mad at South Park. I don't have any problem with it.
You create a comic strip, and you create characters that people interested in like. Immediately, there's all these things, spinoffs, merchandise, TV shows, records, movies.
All of those things have been discussed. They are still in the discussion phase, all of them.
Is this a lot for the head of a 25-year-old young man?
It is, except,
You'd say the same thing about Tiger Woods, or you say the same thing about, the young world soccer stars.
Yeah, to be very suddenly thrust into the spotlight. I certainly, I know I'm not seeing money anywhere near like Tiger Woods. But,
no, few of us are.
But it can be overwhelming. But at the same time, and I bet any of these people would tell you, Tiger Woods or the soccer team, whatever, that you spend so much time working towards that you've thought these things through. Like, I've had plenty of times to think about what I'm going to do about merchandising, what I'm going to do about TV, movies, films, and so it comes at you very suddenly, in the sense that it all comes at you at once. But I'm pretty clear in my mind how I want all those things to progress, right, and I'm not rushing into it. We're taking things in a very slow, steady, and careful pace, because it's early on where you make the big mistakes that cost you millions down the road.
The series is called The Boondocks. The artist is Aaron McGruder. Thank you.
Thank you.
Pleasure. We'll be right back. Stay with us.